After the success of the Aladdin video game on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, Disney attempted to recreate the success. So this time Disney wanted a Lion King video game to be in development alongside the movie. Before that, usually toy video games would be out a few months after the release of the movie, but this time Disney wanted the game to be taken as seriously as the movie that it is based on. So they asked Virgin Interactive Entertainment, the developer and publisher of the Genesis version of the Aladdin game, to develop a Lion King game as well. And Disney themselves would do the animations of the game alongside the new rendering process so that it would have an animation that is almost as good as the movie itself. The developers were given voice samples of the characters, and the creators of the music of the movie also made music for the game. A short while after the release of the movie, the Lion King video game would be out on home and handheld consoles of Nintendo and Sega and personal computers, alongside an $8 million advertisement campaign. Just like the Aladdin game, the elements that made the movie special would also exist in the game. If the Aladdin game was good, the Lion King video game had to be great. A game known to be one of the best video games ever by Disney fans and also one of the most difficult games ever by retro gamers. And also one of the main reasons of the existence of DirectX. At the time, it was one of the most impressive video games ever. So now, after 30 years, I am going to see if this game actually holds up after all this time, or the only reason that this game is so beloved is the impressive animations of the time. For this video, I played 4 versions of the game: Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo Game Boy, and Sega Game Gear. I played them on the Disney Classic Games collection, except for the Game Gear version that is absent from the collection. I know there are more versions than these 4, but they are just a slightly different version of them. And also I think this game exists on LCD games as well, but I do not need to play a Tiger Electronic LCD game to realize if it's a good game or not. Of course it's a bad game. In my first few playthroughs of the Genesis and the SNES version, I used save states and the rewind back function. But I played them enough times to get used to them, and my final playthrough of them, that are the playthroughs that I captured, is done without any use of save states or rewind back function. But my footage of the Game Boy and the Game Gear versions do include the use of the rewind back function, because I just don't think that those versions are good enough to get good at. So now, with all the introductions out of the way, here is my review of the different versions of the 1994 Virgin Interactive Lion King video game. We start the game at the beautiful savanna of Pridelands. Simba is trying to reach his father, and you can get used to his controls here. You can move and look up and down with the D-pad. You have one button for jump and one button for roar. On the top left of your screen is your roar meter. Each time you roar, it will be reduced and it takes a short while for it to refill. The higher roar meter you have, the louder you can roar. For some enemies, you will need a louder roar. On the top right, you can see your health. And also here I should mention that this game is some sort of a cinematic platformer. It is less of a Mario and more of a Prince of Persia. What I want to say is that don't expect your platforming to be as good as more well-known platformers. It is not going to be as fast or accurate as what you expect. The platforming is more realistic and you should be more careful with it. In real life, you cannot jump too high and you can't have a control of where you land when you have already jumped.
The cat, if he jumps in midair, wouldn't all of a sudden jump and turn the other way. He'd have some actions where he turns around. Physics would carry him a certain way. So we have to make these things appear to happen instantly and still apply the same sort of naturalistic feel that the film has.
Be patient and you will get used to it. There are chameleons that you can deal with by jumping on them. And there are hedgehogs that you should roar at them to make them vulnerable and then you should jump on them. And there are bugs that when you jump on them, they would explode, so run away from them after jumping on them. And there are also yellow bugs that by collecting them you will receive health. Checkpoints of this game is in the form of Simba's painting. You can also grab the ledge of platforms. There are also some colorful bugs that you can collect, but I don't know what they do. At the end of the level, you will see a hyena as your first boss fight. And it is easy. Just avoid it for a few seconds until it gets tired, then jump on it. In the Game Boy version, explosive bugs will explode by impact, so stay away from them and kill them by roaring at them. You have no roar meter in the handheld versions. The Game Gear version of this level is vertical. You should use the platforms and the circles that you can grab to reach the higher parts of the levels. Bugs on this version will explode when you get near them. It also has some emeralds that you can collect, but again, I don't know what they do. You will see a pixel art version of the Everything the Light Touches scene in the home console versions after the first level. After each level, you have a chance of playing a minigame in which you can play as Timon or Pumbaa and collect bugs to get extra lives and continues. Here is probably where a lot of people were stuck as a kid. Yes, it becomes that hard in the second level. Just like the movie, it has realistic colors, but suddenly it changes into a colorful world. There are rhinos that you can grab their tails and swing. Jumping on their heads will send you flying into the sky. And there are monkeys that will send you into another part of the level. There are giraffes that you can use their heads as a platform, but do it fast because when you jump on them, they will look up and that will send you down into the water and it will instantly kill you. You can see some nests that you can jump on and you can use them to reach some pink monkeys. Roaring at them will change the direction that they will send you at. This level is some sort of a puzzle platformer. At first, the monkeys will send you back to where you was, and you should change the direction of pink monkeys so that you will be sent to the end of the level. There are ostriches that you can ride, and in these parts you should have fast reflections. There are pink animals that you should jump to avoid them, and nests that you should hold down to duck so that they won't hit you. And sometimes there are both nests and animals, and you should jump twice to avoid them. And you should be careful with its timing. Any mistake can lead to an instant death. Then you will reach a tight platforming section. You should swing with the tails of the rhinos and jump on the head of hippos to reach the next section. In the Genesis version, there are shortcuts, and I won't feel bad for using them because this part is not a fair challenge. It is just annoying, because after a few playthroughs, I still don't know what part of the tails I should grab exactly. In the Game Boy version, you don't need to roar at the monkeys. Also, the small size of the screen and the placing of the ostriches makes this version of the level even more unfair. In the Game Gear version, the ostriches are just moving platform and there is no do or die situations in them. But the puzzle elements are still there, but here roaring works on all monkeys. Just like the movie, there is a gigantic skull that hyenas would come outside of it. It is one of those situations that the boss of the first level would become a regular enemy. There is a locked door that would be unlocked when you deal with the hyenas. Then there will be some falling platforms that you can get health by avoiding them. But then there are some bugs that you will be damaged by collecting them. This game sometimes punishes you for exploration, and I don't think that is considered a good design. There are some bones that you can grab and swing to reach the next sections. Then you will see new enemies in the form of vultures, and they can obviously fly, but you can deal with them by jumping on them. Some parts of the level is blocked with piles of bones, and like the classic Sonic games, you can hold down while moving to roll down and destroy them. And then some ledges that you should grab and climb to get to the higher places of the level. For some of them you should do it fast in order to avoid instant death. There are also some springs in the level, and some of them will break down. Then some breakable platforms that you should be careful with to avoid getting hurt. And then a part that you can avoid the enemies and run, and even tank damage to reach the end of the level faster. But be careful, because there is a part that if you make a mistake in it, you will be sent to the beginning of the level. At the end of the level, there is another locked door that will be opened when you kill the 3 hyenas that are guarding it. When the level ends, just like the movie, the camera goes up to show Scar. And in the games, thanks to some shadowing, he looks even more menacing. In the Game Boy version, the climbing of the ledges is kinda automated. Just mash the jump button. And I guess here is a good place to mention that the handheld versions are kinda mindless. Like very few times I actually had to slow down and do some actual platformings. This level is different. Simba is running toward the camera, and you can only move him to left and right, and you can jump, but you have even less control over it. Just like the movie, there are a lot of wild beasts, each of them moving at a different speed. And there are also some rocks that you should avoid as well. They will blink 3 or 4 times before hitting you. Sometimes instead of a picture of a rock, a question mark will appear. And you may think it means that the placing of the rock would be random, but nope, it is always the same place. The handheld versions are easier. In the Game Boy version, it is a top-down view and there is no rock, so it is easier to avoid getting hit. The Game Gear version is a traditional level. You just need to be careful of where and when you jump. Also note that if you are playing the handheld versions on easy mode, this will be the final level. So play the handheld versions on normal or hard mode to get the entire experience. This level starts with a cutscene. This time you have to reach the lower part of the level in order to escape. But be careful, because some rocks will fall down occasionally. In some parts, giant rocks will roll down and kill you if they touch you, and you should run fast to avoid it. Sometimes there is an enemy that you should roll to kill. At first I was not aware of this move and I lost a lot of lives because of that. Also, this level loves hedgehogs and pits filled with spikes. Being cocky in this level will get you killed. The level also ends with a cutscene. The Game Boy version is just a dumbed down version of the level. In the Game Gear, it is also dumbed down, but it also reuses assets from the first level and it is not a challenge at all. In this level, there are waterfalls that will send you down, and by holding left or right sometimes you can change the direction to get some collectibles. There are some frogs that shoot at you when you get near them, and spiders that are really annoying. They move fast and jump at the worst moments possible. This level is also full of ledges that you can grab and rocks that you can swing on, and sometimes go different ways to get health and extra life. But the worst part of the level is where you should cross a river and a waterfall, and there are logs that you can use as platforms, but the way they move makes it really difficult. At the end of the level, you will see an actual boss fight. There is a gorilla that hits you when you get close to it. So you have to wait and avoid the coconuts that he throws at you, and then jump on him when he gets up. And if you don't, he would hit the ground so hard that it would damage you. Do this cycle a few times and you will win. In the Game Boy version, making mistakes at the waterfall section won't instantly kill you, but instead it is slow and boring. The gorilla boss fight functions different in this one. He will throw coconuts, but this time you have to jump at a certain time to throw it back to him in order to damage it. The Game Gear version of this level is annoying. It is completely different from the other versions. In this level, there are leaves that you can use as a platform and leaves that you can use to swing. But it is hard to tell where exactly you need to go. The gorilla here is also different. He just tries to slap you, but it is easy to cheese this version of the boss fight. Now we have reached the adult Simba levels. The gameplay changes a little bit. You cannot roll down anymore, but you now have a slash and a double slash button. And I think Simba is a little bit slower now. And we have a new type of enemies, leopards. They will jump on you and attack you when they see you, but mashing the slash button usually gets things done. This game has a very simple combat system. There are also some annoying monkeys that throws rocks at you. And there are some portal thingies that blocks your way and summons a few leopards, and when you deal with them, Rafiki would come and unlock the door for you. Then you will see some giant rocks that are connected to vines, and by slashing the vines, the rocks would fall and roll to make way for you. But don't touch them when they are moving. Also check around to find some extra continues before setting the rocks free. After a while, you can find a bottle that increases your maximum roll capacity, which is useless because I barely use my roll. It should have increased the maximum health instead, because being hit 4 times will kill you, and that is annoying at the latter half of the game. You will reach Mufasa's ghost at the end of the level. In the Game Boy version, the gorilla becomes a regular enemy. Also here, it is a little bit hard to find your way out. The Game Gear version continues being annoying with a level design that is both boring and confusing at the same time. You will fight the gorilla again at the end of the Game Gear level. Here the game can get really annoying. There is too many enemies in the level, and because the combat system is kinda brain dead, that is not a good thing. And also the worst animals that can exist in video games is here. Bats. They rotate around you fast and it is really hard to hit them. They are the reason of half of my deaths. And not only there is too many enemies, there also is too many obstacles. Lava comes from both above and below, and it makes this level hell. After a while, you will reach a section that you have to hit a few rocks that are connected to the ceiling to continue. After that, you will be on a moving platform on the lava, and bats will attack you. Here really needed a checkpoint, but there isn't any. And because of that, if you choose to not use the rewind back function of the collection, it can really be annoying because those bats can make you fall into lava and die instantly. The Genesis version sometimes glitches and doesn't load all the bats, which is a good thing actually. After more platforming, you will reach the boss fight of this level. There are 4 holes that lava comes out of them, and it would lead to some rocks fall down. You have to avoid them until those holes would be blocked, and then you have to jump on the left one to finish the level. The Game Boy version does not include this level, and the Game Gear version is again a boring level design. This level is also annoying. This one is a maze. This level is full of caves, and if you reach one and push the up button, you will go to another one. Each room also has a few caves and you need to kill all the hyenas in a room to be able to use the caves. There are two things that makes this level unfair. First is the fact that you don't know which cave to use, so a lot of times you would go to the wrong room and it takes a long while to find the right cave. And second is that when Simba is an adult, the hyenas act unpredictably, and that combined with the large count of the hyenas makes this level really hard. The final room has 4 hyenas in it and it is more than enough to make this level a nightmare. The Game Boy version is again just a smaller version of the home console versions. But each time you enter a new room, you will have a few seconds of iframes so that the hyenas wouldn't kill you the moment that you enter a room. And the Game Gear version is again just boring. Now in the final level we can deal with Scar. After multiple playthroughs, I have just realized how to fight him. You should jump on Scar's head. When you do that, Simba would automatically slash Scar once. That is when you should rapidly mash the slash button to do a huge damage to him. When he forces you to stop doing that, get away from him so that he can't hit you, and then repeat the cycle until he runs away. Then you have to do more platforming to fight Scar again. There are multiple hyenas in the way, but I suggest you to just avoid them. After fighting Scar for the second time, you have to do even more platforming. But this time it is really annoying. There are a few platforms, but lightning will strike on most of them, and they would be burning in fire. It took me a while to understand the pattern and avoid reaching Scar without losing most of my health. When you fight Scar for the third time, things get a little bit different. You should still do the multiple slash thing until Scar gets tired. That is when you should move toward him and hold the double slash button, and that would throw Scar. Just like the movie, you should use this technique to throw Scar off the Pride Rock. After defeating Scar, the rain would put out the fire and you will reclaim the throne. The Game Boy version has no strategy. Just mash the slash button to defeat Scar. In the Game Gear version, there is no level. It is just Simba vs Scar. And in this one, when Scar jumps, you should also jump and slash at him to send him down. I expected the Game Boy version to be the worst of the 4, but somehow the Game Gear version was worse. And the reason is that the Game Boy version is a watered down version of the home console versions. But the home console versions are good enough, and even a watered down version of it is fine. But the Game Gear version tried to be its own thing and failed miserably. Usually I would prefer Game Gear games to be their own thing and avoid being just the worst version of the Sega Genesis games. For example, I do not love most of the Game Gear Sonic games because they just try to be the Genesis Sonic games on the go, but because the Game Gear is much weaker than the Genesis, they fail, and I would rather replay the Genesis games than playing the Game Gear ones. But the only Game Gear Sonic game that I love is Tails Adventure, because it does not try to be the Genesis games on the go. It knows the Game Gear is not as powerful as the Genesis, and because of that it tries to be its own thing, and this makes it one of the best Game Gear games ever. But because The Lion King on Game Gear is probably a rushed product, it failed both as a handheld version of a home console game and as its own thing. The Game Boy version isn't anything special either. In the year of 1994, it was acceptable, but now that you can play the better versions on the likes of Nintendo Switch, there is no need to play this version of the game. Nowadays, I don't think there is any Game Boy game that is still good by today's standards. But now we get to the important question. Which version is the best, SNES or Genesis? I believe it is up to your own taste. They are both good games, but in my personal opinion, the Genesis version is slightly better, because in the SNES version the camera is a little bit zoomed and that makes the game a little bit unfair. Also, in the SNES version the color look, what is the word, muddy, washed up, it looks a little bit weird, and I prefer Genesis music over SNES music. And also those shortcuts in the Genesis/Mega Drive version saves you from a few unfair challenges. But again, feel free to disagree with me, because this stuff is usually subjective. But now the other important question. Does this game hold up after 30 years? Yes, but under one condition. Don't play it on the original hardware. I suggest you to get the Disney Classic Games collection, because that rewind back function saves you from annoying moments. And also it includes Aladdin and the Jungle Book games as well. The handheld games aren't anything special, but the home console games alone makes it worth it.